talk about why I left the gentle parenting movement. So you might remember back in the day, I would make videos like 10 things not to say to kids, or why you should do time-ins instead of time-outs, or why you shouldn't say no so much and you should say yes more often. Now, I still like those videos and still think that there's a lot of wisdom to be gained from the gentle parenting movement. And I'm going to share some of that here, steel manning it. But I also want to share some of the ways that I feel the movement has kind of departed from me and I've departed from it, and maybe you'll relate. So first of all, hi, welcome back to Hi Fam, I'm Avital. My mission here is to help you to build a strong, resilient family culture, an incredible bond with your children, and a family culture that really reflects your values. And if you want to hear more about that, you should definitely check out my membership, The Studio, which is a community of parents from over 100 countries around the world. We have thousands of members, and what we do is we actually learn how to be leaders in our home, how not to leave the raising of our children up to the culture out there, but rather to really step in with clarity, with definition, with mission, and with incredible skills to build the type of home we want our children to grow up in with the values that we believe in. If that sounds good to you, if you want more togetherness, if you want more resilience, if you want more friendship and influence and teamwork and all these great things inside of your home, check out hifam.com/studio. So back in the day, I was making a lot of gentle, respectful, wry, attachment, conscious, simplicity parenting videos. And again, I still like them and I still actually parent that way for the most part. In other words, I still believe that parents should look at themselves first and foremost. I still believe that modeling is one of the most, if not the most, potent parenting tool that we have. In other words, we have to be the adults that we want our children to grow into. I also still believe in treating children with respect, talking to them the way we would like them to talk to others, and trying not to raise our voice or be too punitive or to reward too much, because I think too many controls and too many manipulations on a relationship can strain it and can also really degrade our authority in the relationship. I still believe that we should create a deep bond and attachment and a friendship with our children. However, I feel that the gentle parenting movement, if it can be called that, has kind of devolved into something that I don't recognize as much today. I think that the original writers of many of the books that I've read, and I'll link some of them below, had the idea of directing us towards authoritative parenting. Yes, they had a big emphasis on controlling your words, on being kind, on regulating yourself, but they also saw the parent as the authority in the home. So quick recap of the three kind of most, famous categories of parenting styles. We have the authoritarian parent. The authoritarian parent provides very, very high expectations, a lot of boundaries, a lot of rules, a lot of expectations. The parent sets a high standard and it's do as I say because I said so. This is the style of parenting that often resorts to punishments and rewards and makes sure to really shape the child. So there's very high expectations. The problem with this style of parenting is that it has high expectations, but it has low support. So there's not much warm and fuzzies, there's not much help, there's not much love, there's not much connection. And often children in these relationships don't fare all that well. They often have a lot of insecurities. They often have estranged or strained relationships with their parents in adulthood, and it affects them in numerous ways. On the other side of the spectrum, we have permissive parenting. And permissive parenting is characterized by very high support, which is actually good for children. There's a lot of love, there's a lot of eye contact, attachment, bonding, quality time spent together. There's a lot of warmth. But it's also characterized by low expectations, which is actually really bad for kids. There are very little boundaries or rules, no standards to speak of, and the parents often resort to bribing and praising and cajoling and manipulating and nagging and begging when they can't get their children to behave or to perform to normal societal standards. The authoritative parenting style, very confusingly named, I know, is the style that takes the good from each of these styles and leaves the bad. So it takes the high expectations from the authoritarian style and the high support from the permissive style. And that lends itself to a style of parenting that has standards. It expects its children to behave well, to do well, to listen to adult authority, to be cooperative, and all of those good things, but it also offers a lot of warmth and support. So there's a secure attachment, there's quality time spent together, there's a lot of connection and a lot of love and a friendship there. Now, the gentle and respectful parenting movement always struck me, at least in the beginning of my parenting days, as promoting the authoritative style of parenting. But as time has gone on, I've seen a kind of slip in its willingness to put any boundaries forth, to hold any standards, to set any expectations, to promote resilience and capability and strength in a child. And what I've seen is that instead, many of the gentle, respectful, attachment parenting communities slip further and further into permissiveness. This kind of devolution has lent itself to mean that when someone says it's a gentle parenting community, it's attachment parenting community, respectful, RIE, all of these different labels, some more than others, they often will actually be kind of harboring within them, right, kind of Trojan horse style, a permissive parenting approach. Now, here's the big problem with that, is that permissive parenting is even worse for children than authoritarian parenting. Parents who offer them high support and low expectations, children fare worse with regards to their academic achievements, with regards to staying out of jail, staying off the street, staying off of drugs, physical health, mental health, anxiety, depression, suicide, all of that, they score lower than children who are raised with parents who offered them high expectations and low support. And yet, today's trend is slip sliding towards this high support, low expectations parenting style. And so I'm always a little bit cautious when someone is going to teach me gentle parenting advice, when psychologists talk about conscious parenting or peaceful parenting. When we hear a lot about this kind of, mindful parenting space, I've just got my ears a little bit perked up and just a little suspicious. I just want to see that there are boundaries, that they are willing to set standards, that they're willing to hold expectations, that they are willing to set limits, that they are willing to follow through with consequences, which often, they're basically the same as punishments. If you're not too precious about it, you have to be aware that those communities, teachers, and books are sometimes going to promote a very permissive style, which is bad for our children. So that's point number one. Gentle parenting is sometimes synonymous with permissive parenting. Point number two that I never really took from gentle parenting is that gentle parenting can be very unnatural. Listen, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be constantly editing myself, worried about what I've said, robotic style parenting, okay? I also just want to relax and feel confident and intuitive and attuned to my kids and kind of just have a normal day. And there's something about going too deep down the rabbit hole of gentle parenting, respectful attachment, all that. I'm just like, all of those alternative styles of parenting, I've bundled them into one. I know that's going to offend some people, but just for the sake of this video. When you go too far down that rabbit hole, you start to become extremely self-conscious and extremely inhibited. Now, I believe in self-growth. I like to try to develop my character, to try to work on my skills, to try to become a better person. I don't think that's bad at all. I don't want to just be my authentic self because my authentic self is nothing to write home about. I have a lot to work on and I'm very into that. However, when you take it too far, when you get too immersed in that world, there's this constant self-judging and self-flagellation and self-concern, this navel-gazing, this self-consciousness that leads to the relationship being strained. And that's not good. I think it's good to learn a little bit and to try to practice some things, try to infuse some new scripts and try to, improve our communication skills. Cool. But not to forget who we are, not to erase our idiosyncrasies, not to erase our character, not to flatten ourselves into this zombified robot version of all the other parents out there. Like, you're you. Sometimes you yell, sometimes you're sarcastic, sometimes you tease, sometimes you're silly, sometimes you're not the best listener, sometimes you're the best listener. Whatever. I want you to be more of you. And I think parenting is going to be really an uphill struggle, very unpleasant, very stunted, and really kind of a bit fake if we're all just trying to go by the scripts in the book all the time. Now, I say this as someone who provides scripts to my members. I write scripts. I help people to figure out how to phrase certain things. Like, again, I think it's good to think about these things and to edit ourselves somewhat and to build our character and to make as positive choices as we can in our communication. But I also think that it shouldn't be unnatural. It shouldn't become something that this is my whole identity, like a cult-like kind of following of this particular way of parenting. And I think that's also born of the very unrealistic standard that's often set in the gentle parenting world. When you read the books, it makes it sound like these parents never lose their cool, never have just a hard day, are never exhausted, are never fed up, are never bluesy and annoyed. Like their kids always just stop shy of being that maddening. You know, they never have that explosive a tantrum or behave that badly that you really are going to lose it. I mean, when you hear the examples that the gurus bring in their books, they're always, I think, a little bit sterilized for our reading pleasure. And I think that that sets an unrealistic standard. I'd rather we talk real talk about what it really takes to be a parent and the types of things that we really meet. Look, parents in my community, my students, they talk about sometimes raising their hands at their children, which is such a shame-filled and frightening thing to admit and to share. But that's the reality that many children and parents are dealing with. Raising our voices, having doubts about being parents in the first place. All of these things are honest and authentic and real parts of parenting. And I think the gentle parenting space doesn't always allow for the real human challenges that we face. Another reason I feel a bit dissociated from the whole gentle parenting movement is that I've found in recent years that many of the gurus and experts and authors in this space being politically correct, and they're unwilling to speak simple truths. They know certain things are good or not good for children, but they're unwilling to make those judgments or to explain the truth or to say simple biological facts for fear of being cancelled, for fear of being called a bigot or being outcast. And I find that disingenuous and also unhelpful. For me, the inability to speak basic, clear, honest truths, especially as a professional, as a PhD, as a researcher, as an author, kind of disqualifies you from giving useful, honest advice. And I just find that, for me, that makes their advice a moot point, unhelpful, useless. Like, I can't take anything they say seriously after that. Another thing I find hard about the gentle parenting movement, yes, I'm letting it all rip today, is that it's really, really judgy. Now, listen, I think judgment is a word that we can make a whole different video about because, yeah, we have to be judging and discerning. But I also find that what happens when you're so kind of obsessed and concerned with parental behavior, how we phrase things, the face we make, the body language we make, what we did, what we said, how it was, how sensitive we were, right? When we have this kind of robotic level of control over our behaviors, is that we also tend to blame ourselves for our children's challenges. Normal behaviors in kids, like having a tantrum, like lying, like kicking their friend, that just do need to be dealt with, don't always mean that the parent has somehow traumatized the kid. And I refer you to my video all about trauma here because that concept has creeped in to become this kind of catch-all phrase for anything that a child does wrong, right? When a child does something wrong, we say, he must be traumatized. And how is he traumatized? Well, I don't know. He didn't live through any traumatic event that I know of, so it must just be me. It must just be my parenting. There's this kind of, self-reflection that becomes really overdone, overkill, overstretched, just overwhelming in the gentle parenting space where everything the child acts out or expresses is somehow the parent's fault. It must have been a trauma he suffered at birth. It must have been because of how you breastfed him or didn't. It must have been because he has sugar or TV or, wasn't with you for the first 6 months or was dad. Like, it just becomes a never-ending litany of things that I might have done wrong as a parent. And yeah, hey, listen, I might have done a lot of things wrong as a parent. In fact, for sure I did. But the truth is that so has every parent because there's no such thing as a perfect parent. And yet this movement becomes, I think, very perfectionistic. So if you have perfectionistic tendencies, if you have a tendency to feel lack of confidence or inhibited or worried about how you're behaving, it preys on that. It feeds on that. It really balloons all of those concerns that you already had about yourself and makes you guilt-ridden. And I know this because I have hundreds of students who come to me saying, I just feel so guilt-ridden because I didn't do I didn't do cloth diaper, I didn't do elimination communication, I didn't baby-led weaning, I let my kid watch too much TV, I yelled, oh my God, I've damaged my kid for life. there's something about this philosophy that's seeing kids as so fragile and seeing parents as so damaging. And like, dude, no, that is not the world we live in. That is not true. Your kids are not fragile and you are not a damaging parent. We're all just doing the best we can. And usually that is well good enough. I want us to return back to the concept of the good enough parent. Like, yep, we're not perfect, but nobody is. And the good news is that kids don't need perfect, right? As long as we're not actually abusing our children and we're trying our best and we're showing up with love and connection and discipline, then we're giving them what we can and we're giving them what they need. And that is enough. I think often I look at the gurus in the spaces and I feel like they're so disconnected from what real child rearing looks like and feels like and works like. They're kind of stuck in their heads or in the ivory tower, and it's all nice in theory, but that's honestly how I've always taken it, like with a grain of salt. Like, these theories are fascinating, but then I have to apply it to my real life. So for me, that's a bit like watching, I don't know, maybe someone who's obsessed with bodybuilding or with some kind of like particular niche health approach to lifestyle and being like, cool, interesting. I'm going to take a few tips and tricks from this person, but I'm not going to become a bodybuilder. This isn't going to be my whole life. I'm not going to be doing this for 9 hours a day and change my entire diet and my entire household. No, I'm going to take what works and leave the rest. And finally, my final beef here with gentle parenting is that kids don't always need gentleness. Sometimes kids need toughness. I know this because I'm the mother of 5. I was a tough kid myself. I needed some tough parenting in my childhood. And some of my kids need a firmer hand. Not literally, not physically, but they need clear boundaries. They need follow through. They need consequences. They need timeouts. They need to be really held through their behaviors and shaped and corrected. They need discipline, in other words. And discipline is kind of often feels like it's the opposite of gentle parenting. Like, it's not always about empathizing and understanding and reflecting and naming the emotion and sitting with it and creating a safe space and, you're finding the diagnosis that's just going to fit. That's just, oh, it's the sensory. No, it's the sensitivity. No, it's strong-willed. Like, no, it's not always about all of that over-analyzing and over-catering and bending over backwards. Sometimes it's just about clear boundaries, strong parenting, being authoritative. I want to make a pitch for the return of the authoritative parent who is comfortable with authority, who is warm and friendly and smiley, and sometimes yells because enough is enough. Right? Sometimes is able to say, no, I will not put up with that, and can do it in a warm and friendly way, can do it with a smile or not with a smile sometimes, but can do it clearly, can set the boundary, can follow through, can be consistent, and most of all can create this strong family culture where, yes, there are high standards, but yes, there is also a lot of high support and a lot of love and connection, a lot of investment in the child, a lot of mentoring, a lot of guidance. But don't forget the high expectations part. If you forget the high expectations part, if you forget the high standards part, then you will fall into the permissive parenting trap. And that is so bad for our kids. That is what leads them down the path of anxiety and depression and self-harm and substance abuse and criminality. And we don't want that. And here's the real thing here, okay? So if you've kind of got, if you're multitasking, come back to me, okay? If you fall into permissive parenting, it means your child doesn't have an authority figure at home, right? Because it means you're not an authority. You're not setting any boundaries or holding any expectations. But the truth is that children crave and need authority. They need boundaries. They need to feel like someone's in control. Can you imagine if you were a passenger aboard a cruise ship and just at the moment when the storm started hitting and the waves started getting more strong, the whole boat is rocking and the captain is nowhere to be found? The captain is there just soothing your empathy. The captain is there being like, what do you want to do? Can you imagine how disorienting you'd be like, take the helm, guide us, steer us, do something. Don't just focus on me and my happiness, take us to safety. That is how a child feels when a parent slips down that slide of permissiveness and lets go of the helm of the family, does not captain the ship. The child feels lost. I don't know how to do this. You're the adult. You're the one with the developed prefrontal cortex. You're the one with the life experience. You're the one with the legal responsibility. You're the one with a fully developed body. Like, you get us to safety. You guide us. You tell us. You make decisions. When a child feels that the parent has not taken the helm, they feel unsafe. And here's the really bad part of that, is that they will seek authority elsewhere. That is why they will be very susceptible to be preyed upon by cults, by ideologies, by extreme or radical movements, or even by teachers or doctors or any kind of leader in their community that says, "Here, come, I'll show you the way. I'll give you strong values. I'll tell you what to stand for. I'll tell you what's right and wrong." They're going to be so weak and so bereft and so thirsty for that kind of authority that they will find it elsewhere. Don't let that happen. Make sure that your child finds that authority figure in you. Make sure that you are there to guide them, to set limits and boundaries, to be clear-cut in your authority, to be powerful in your leadership. And if you're not sure how to do that, I would be honored to guide you in the studio. You can check out highfam.com/studio. And hopefully you'll also get a lot of that wisdom and direction here in these videos. If this was confronting for you, if it spiked resistance, if you hated me for it, if you were like, "No, Avital, gentle parenting is everything," and nothing of the things that you just said, hey, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear how you have a similar or dissimilar experience and what your key takeaways are. Much, much love to you, and keep on living that high fam life. I'll see you in the next video.